deception. And you're going to have to kind of be patient with me as we talk about this, because I'm going to take you through some nice definitions, and also we're going to kind of go through a timeline so we can kind of see how this story is all going to come about and how we're going to learn about the art of deception. So if we want to go to the first slide. Maybe. No problem. Okay, well, they're pulling that up. I'll just tell you what deception is. So deception is the act of deceiving someone, and to deceive is usually of a person, causing someone to believe something that is not true. So it's the act of convincing yourself that what you're saying is going to be correct, and usually using it upon influence on someone else in order for personal gain. Deception is honestly, literally the first and oldest trick of the Bible. If we remember back to Adam and Eve, the snake deceived Eve in turn deceived Adam, and they ultimately displeased God. So it is literally the oldest trick in the book. And the point about talking about deception is for us to kind of understand what deception is, how we can see it in our life, and how we can see it in other people as well. So the first point I really want to make is deception is a wicked, wicked thing. Deception is something that kind of comes up and sneaks up on you. And if we're not careful, it can kind of take over us. It can take over our mindset. It can take over our actions. And it can ultimately take over the people around us too. If we think back to that story about Adam and Eve, it was so easy for the snake to deceive Eve. It took one idea, one convincing, and then in turn, it ultimately had a downfall. But we're not talking about Adam and Eve today. We're actually going to be talking about the story of Jacob and Esau. I had a timeline, a family tree for you guys to kind of see what the links of Jacob and Esau is. So before we get into the deception of Jacob and Esau, I want us to fully understand where Jacob and Esau are in the Bible. It's kind of fun to see links in the stories. So Jacob and Esau were descendants of Abraham. Abraham, if you remember the story, the man of his old age could not conceive a child, and he begged and begged and begged the Lord. Sarah did as well. They tried ways to conceive a child without themselves by giving the servant Hagar to Abraham, and in turn had a son. But the Lord blessed Abraham. He blessed Abraham with a son named Isaac from Sarah. And the Lord told Abraham that your descendants were going to be as vast as the stars in the sky. So when Abraham and Sarah conceived their son Isaac, this was the first of this prophecy. Isaac is also the son who was to be sacrificed for the Lord. And to put that into perspective, God told Abraham, hey, I know that it's taken you a super long time to conceive, and this is your only son by Sarah, but I want you to sacrifice him on the mountain for me. And Abraham did. He was about to go up to the mountain and sacrifice Isaac, his only son, the one that he'd prayed for, the one who was to be the first descendant of all the people, as much as the stars of the sky. However, God intervened and saw the faith in Abraham and said, no, actually, you don't have to sacrifice him. I see what you have done. You have been faithful to me. Isaac shall live. Now, Isaac needed a wife. And to also understand where Isaac is in his family and to kind of understand the blessing that we're going to be talking about, I want to highlight that Abraham was of great wealth. Abraham had a lot of stuff, and everything that he had was going to be given to Isaac. So Isaac inherited everything that Abraham had. And so he was of great wealth. So his blessing and his birthright that he would be giving his sons is extremely significant. So Isaac needed a wife. So Abraham told his servant Isaac to go find a wife, or told his servant to go find a wife for Isaac. So Abraham's servant set off to find a woman who was not a Canaanite in order to find a wife for Isaac. Now, God's plan for Abraham, God's plan for his descendants is kind of seen throughout this whole story too. So when Abraham told his servant to go find a wife for Isaac, the servant from Abraham went to go set out and see a wife for Isaac. And while he was praying, he asked the Lord to bless him with a wife that would be satisfactory for Abraham and also satisfactory for Isaac. Before he could even finish his prayer, God answered him and showed him Rebekah. Rebekah ended up coming out to the well before that prayer could even end, because God had already picked out a perfect person for Isaac, and that was who he ended up taking on as his wife. So Abraham's servant showed Rebekah basically the wealth of Abraham. He brought her jewels and jewelry and all these things so that way he could show, like, hey, you're going to be well off if you come back with me to marry my master's son, Isaac. And Rebekah went to tell her family. Her family was obviously pretty surprised, as one would be. And then Abraham's servant showed him of the wealth. They agreed to let Rebekah go back with them. Now, an important factor of Isaac and Rebekah is they conceived two sons named Esau and Jacob. And to flash forward to kind of show you how these stories link, Jacob ultimately has the 12 tribes of Israel, and one of those was Joseph. So if you've known the coat of many colors story, that was one of Jacob's sons. So now that we're all caught up in the kind of the way that the Bible tells it, let's get into the talk of deception. So we already talked that deception is a wicked, wicked thing. And usually it starts with an idea. So let's take a look on how that can be seen in Jacob and Esau's story. We're going to be going to Genesis 25 and starting at verse 19. Genesis 25, verse 19 says, "These are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begat Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to his wife, the daughter of Bethuel, the Syrian of Padan Aram, the sister of Laban and the Syrian. And Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord was entreated of him, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived." So Isaac had the same problem that Abraham and Sarah had, where they didn't know if they were going to have children. And Rebekah had a hard time conceiving, but then the Lord blessed them and gave them 2 sons. 22 says, "And the children struggled together within her, and she said, 'If it be so, why am I thus?' And she went to inquire of the Lord. The Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels, and the one people shall be stronger than the other. The elder shall serve the younger." So the Lord already had told Rebekah that the oldest was going to serve the younger. And this is an important thing to keep in mind as we continue to look through this story. if we look to verse 24, and in her days to be delivered were fulfilled. Behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red all over like a hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. And after that his brother came out, his hand took hold of Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them. And the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man, dwelling in the tents. Isaac loved Esau because he did eat of his venison, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So we already see kind of a little bit of a divide in the family. So Esau was Isaac's favorite, Jacob was Rebekah's favorite. And let's remember, the prophecy that had been told to Rebekah was that the oldest was ultimately going to serve the younger. So in verse 29 is when we see our first time of deception. In verse 29 it says, Jacob sawed pottage, Esau came from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, feed me, I pray thee, with some red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore his name was called Edom. And Jacob said, sell me this day thy birthright. And Esau said, behold, I am at the point to die. What profit shall this birthright do to me? So Esau is famished. He's super hungry. He really wants something to eat. Jacob saw that he was vulnerable in this factor, and he asked him to sell him his birthright. If we remember back to how wealthy Abraham is, everything that Abraham had went to Isaac. And Isaac in turn was going to give that to his firstborn son, his birthright. All of everything that he owned was going to be Esau's. So like the significance of how much he gave up just for a pot of soup is baffling. It's crazy. It's crazy. Like, wouldn't you just think, hey, you know what? I'm good. I'm going to go out and find it elsewhere. Like, because he could have done that, but he didn't. And Jacob knew that Esau was desperate, so he used that to his advantage. It started with an idea. He had to think about deceiving his brother. And action never comes first. The idea comes first. He had to think about it. He had time to go away from that and to say, you know what, actually that's like really bad. I do want wealth someday, but I don't want it from my brother. Like, he had time to do that. But instead, he used that action to deceive his brother and influence him. And his brother agreed. And his birthright was given to Jacob. In verse 33, Jacob said, swear to me this day, and he swore unto him, and he sold his birthright unto Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink, and rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. So Esau definitely felt some regret after doing this, because he despised it. The act of deceiving, this wicked thing of deceiving, took away something from Esau so that way Jacob would then prosper. So Jacob had already had his birthright. We're going to go ahead and go to chapter 27. Chapter 27, verse 1. So this is where we're going to kind of see the deception not only in Jacob, but within his family as well. So chapter 27, verse 1, it says, it came to pass that when Isaac was old, his eyes were dim, so that he could not see. He called his eldest son and said unto him, my son. And he said unto him, behold, here I am. He said, behold now, I am old. I know not the day of my death. Therefore take, I pray thee, thy weapons, thy quiver, thy bow, and go out to the field, and take me some venison. And make me savory meat, such as I love. Bring it to me, that I may eat, my soul may bless thee before I die. And Rebekah heard when Isaac spake to Esau his son, and Esau went to the field to hunt for venison and bring it. So Esau had already given up his birthright. He'd already had given up his wealth at this point to Jacob. So the only thing that was left was Isaac's blessing. And the blessing was also usually given to the oldest son because it was a way for God to bless the one who's oldest. In verse 6, we see that Rebekah kind of figures out a way to deceive Isaac. In verse 6 it says, Rebekah spake unto Jacob her son, saying, Behold, I heard thy father speak unto Esau thy brother, saying, Bring me venison, make me savory meat, that I may eat and bless thee before the Lord before my death. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice according to that which I command thee. So Rebekah knew that Esau was getting the blessing, and she wanted Jacob to have that blessing instead. So she had to come up with a way to get Jacob what she wanted for him to get. And let us think back that the prophecy that Rebekah had already been given is that the oldest was going to serve the younger. One was already going to be stronger than the other. She did not need to intercept, because that was already the Lord's plan for her sons, that she was to have the older son serve the younger. Whether he had his blessing or his birthright, it didn't matter, because that was ultimately going to be God's plan. But this is a perfect example of how we take God's timing and put it into our own hands so we can get what we need faster. It starts with an idea. Rebekah had the thought, and instead of praying to God what that thought meant, maybe going a different direction, she acted upon it immediately and asked Jacob to come so that she may tell him her plan. In verse 9, it says, Go now to the flock and fetch me from thence 2 good kids of the goats, and I will make them savory meat for thy father, such as he loveth. And thou shalt bring it to thy father, that he may eat and may bless thee before his death. And Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, Behold, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. My father peradventure will feel me, and I shall seem to him a deceiver, and I shall bring a curse upon me, not a blessing. So Jacob knew exactly what this meant. This is not his first time deceiving someone. He deceived his brother before too. So he had some understanding of what to do with this. Rebekah had thought of the first part of the plan. Jacob reminded her of the second. But together they went to deceive. When things do not come as from God, when ideas, when influence does not come from God, it is always a reactive measure. Isn't it so funny how easily it came to Jacob that, oh wait, he's going to feel me too. We need to take care of that problem. Oh wait, he needs food. How are we taking care of that? It is a reactive thing. It comes so easily and it feels so good because you know that power is just around the corner. You just have to commit and take those steps. And what is also significant about deception is that when it started with an idea, when it was given to someone else, they had time to walk away from it. They had time to identify it. Jacob even said, I am deceiving my father. I am going to get a curse rather than a blessing. He identified it right there that he was doing something wrong. Spoke it aloud. Didn't think about it in his mind. Spoke it into existence that this is what was happening. But instead of walking away from it, the ideas just kept coming. So in verse 13, they talk about how they're going to take care of the feeling part of this blessing. His mother said unto him, Upon me be thy curse, my son. Not only obey my voice, but go and fetch me them. And he went, and he fetched, and he brought them to his mother, and his mother made savory meat, such as his father loved. Rebekah took a goodly remnant of her eldest son Esau, which were with her in the house, and she put them on Jacob her younger son. And she put the skins of the kids of the goats upon his hands, upon the smooth of his neck. And she gave the savory meat, the bread, which she had prepared unto the hand of her son Jacob. So they took care of the food part, they took care of the smell, they took care of the feeling. And the ability to have to put all of that stuff on, to sew that stuff on, it takes time. There was opportunity when they were preparing to walk away, but they didn't. They continued to use this deception to forage a way to what they needed. In verse 18, we see, he came unto his father and said, My father, he said, Here am I. Who art thou, my son? And Jacob said unto his father, I am Esau, thy firstborn. I have done according as thou badest me. Arise, I pray thee, sit and eat my venison. Thy soul may bless me. And Isaac said unto his son, How is it that thou found it so quickly, my son? And he said, Because the Lord thy God brought it to me. Because the Lord thy God brought it to me. Deception is a wicked thing. It makes you think that what you are thinking is correct. It makes you believe whatever is influencing you in that moment, that it is correct, that it is the right thing. God did not bless him to give him that stew. His mother made him that stew for him. He didn't even make it. His mother made it for him and gave it to him so he may give it to his father, his blind father. After he had already had all of the wealth, he had already had everything, but it wasn't enough. It's never enough. Deception will always make you go further, will always make you find the next best thing, will always make you find what is more so that way you could be satisfied. But because the act is not from God, you will never be satisfied. In verse 27:21, and Isaac said unto Jacob, Come near, I pray thee, that I may feel thee, my son, whether thou be my very son Esau or not. And Jacob went near to Isaac his father, and he felt him. And he said, The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. So Isaac said that out loud to Jacob, that, oh, you sound like Jacob, but you feel like Esau. So I don't know, this is tripping me up. I don't know what's going on here. And in that moment, Jacob could have turned away. He could have been like, oh yeah, it's just a prank, Dad, my bad. Could have walked away from that. But he didn't. There had to be a point in time where Jacob was like, oh, we're going to get caught. But he didn't, because the deception convinced him that this plan was foolproof. This was going to work. He was going to get that blessing. In 23, he discerned him not because his hands were hairy and as his brother's Esau's hands. So he blessed him. And he said, Art thou my very son Esau? He said, Here am I. This is another opportunity where he could have walked away. Not only did Isaac speak that, hey, you sound like Jacob, but you feel like Esau, so I'm not sure. He asked him again, Are you Esau? And he again said, No, I am him. In verse 25, he said, Bring it near to me, and I will eat my son's venison, that my soul may bless thee. And he brought it near to him, and he did eat. He brought him wine, and he drank. And his father Isaac said unto him, Come near now and kiss me, my son. And he came near and kissed him. And he smelt the smell of his raiment, and he blessed him, and said, See, the smell of my son is the smell of the field which the Lord has blessed. Therefore God give thee the dew of the heaven, and the fatness of the earth, and plenty of corn and wine. Let the people serve thee, the nations bow to thee. Be the Lord over thy brethren, and let thy mother's sons bow down to thee. Cursed be every one that curseth thee, and blessed be he that blessed thee. So his plan worked. He got that blessing. But let us remember that God already told Rebekah that the older was going to serve the younger. He did not need this blessing. He did not need this wealth. He was going to have that destiny, whether or not he had it. But he went for it anyway, because he took it into his own hands. He convinced himself, he convinced everyone around him that this was right in order to gain what he needed. And now we see when Esau returns. In verse 30, it says, "It came to pass soon as Isaac had made the end of the blessing Jacob, and Jacob was yet scarce gone from the presence of Isaac his father, that Esau his brother came in from hunting." So he got the blessing and then he ran off. He was like, "I'm not sticking around. It's a matter of time when Esau is going to come back," and Esau did. "And he hath also made savory meat and brought it unto his father, and said unto his father, Let my father arise and eat of his son's venison, that thy soul may bless me. And Isaac his father said unto him, Who art thou? And he said, I am thy son, thy firstborn Esau. When Isaac trembled very exceedingly, said, Who? Where is he that hath taken venison and brought it to me? I have eaten all of it before thou camest, and I have blessed him. Yea, and he shall be blessed." So in this moment, Isaac realized that he had been deceived. And Isaac is literally blind, and he just wanted to give his son his blessing, his oldest son, his favorite son. Like, that's horrible. You took advantage of this blind man who only wanted to give his blessing to his son. Everything that comes with deception will always come with a downfall. In that moment, Jacob lost the respect of his father, and Jacob lost the respect of his brother. But he still had his mother. In verse 34, it says, "When Esau heard the words of his father, he cried with a great exceedingly bitter cry, and said unto his father, Bless me, even me also, O my father. He said, Thy brother came with subtlety, and hath taken away thy blessing. And he said, Is not he rightly named Jacob? For he hath supplanted me these 2 times. He'd taken away my birthright, and behold, he had taken away my blessing. He said, Hath thou not reserved a blessing for me? And Isaac answered and said unto Esau, Behold, I have made him thy lord and all of his brethren. I have given to him 4 servants with corn and wine, and I have sustained him. And what should I do now unto thee, my son? And Esau said unto his father, Hath thou but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. And Isaac his father answered unto him, saying, Behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth, and the dew from the heaven above. And by the sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother. And shall come to pass when thou shalt have the dominion, and thou shalt break his yoke off from thy neck. In verse 41, we see that Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing wherewith his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, The days of mourning for my father are at hand, and then I will slay my brother Jacob. So Esau wanted to kill Jacob for what he had done, and honestly, rightfully so. I mean, there's nothing. Deception was used in 2 ways in this story. We saw the deceit that Jacob used in order to get what he needed in order to gain. But we also see that Jacob now has this idea that he needs to kill his brother in order to be satisfied too, which is also not of what God has planned. But it's always reactive. Deception is always reactive. Once one thing comes, the next thing comes so easily until you're left with nothing. Jacob had everything in the world, but he lost his father and his brother. And at the end of the story, Rebekah hears what Esau was planning and asked Jacob to go off and run away from it. So he ultimately lost his mother as a repercussion as well. He lost all family members because he needed to gain something more. Even as God had already showed that this was something he was going to obtain. He was going to be the one that was served. And we do see Jacob does fulfill that because he creates the 12 tribes, and he also has his son Joseph as well. So Jacob does do that. That was always the plan. But it is when we take things into our own, when everything falls afterwards. So the reason why I wanted to talk to you about this wasn't necessarily to say that everyone is deceptive at some point, but Because when those thoughts come into our mind, we need to take a step back. We need to pause. There is so much power in a pause when it comes to things that are deceitful. That when you have that idea, though it may come and go, that you speak against it immediately so that way it doesn't flourish. Deception feeds. It feeds on your thoughts. It feeds on the thoughts of others. Rebecca didn't come up with a foolproof plan by herself. She used Jacob, and Jacob and her collaborated to create this amazing plan. But it is when we stop and we ask ourselves, is this right? Is this worth it? Is this something that I want to be known or remembered for? Because Isaac passed away knowing that his son deceived him, or deceived him. So that was Isaac's last moment with Jacob. Jacob will never get that back. Will never get that back. That was his last moments with his mother. He will never get that back. Jacob and Esau became enemies. He will never get that back. His twin brother, his own flesh and blood, his twin brother, the closest to him, literally sharing a womb for the first moments of his life, and he will never get that relationship back because of the deception that took over his life. So when we identify that deception is a wicked thing, when we identify that it starts internally, and when we hear it or speak it to someone else, that we take a step back and we remember that that is not God's promise for us. So I do want to end with a Proverbs. Proverbs 26:24 through 28. Starting with verse 24. Enemies disguise themselves with their lips, but in their hearts they harbor deceit. Though their speech is charming, do not believe them, for 7 abominations fill their hearts. Their malice may be concealed by deception, but their wickedness will be exposed in the assembly. Whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will fall back on them. A lying tongue hates those it hurts, and a fluttering mouth works ruin. So, the moment you identify it first happening is when you can stop it immediately. In verse 28, it says, a lying tongue hates those it hurts, and a fluttering mouth works ruin. When Rebekah told Jacob of her plans, when Jacob told Isaac in the midst of the plan, he was working ruin within his family. He was spitting lies, deceiving his father, so that way he could come out on top. And so when deception comes into your life, you really just got to ask, like, what is this gaining? And if you think that what you are doing is right, take a pause and see if it's actually coming from God or if it's coming from your own gain. God's timing never fails. But it is when we take God's timing into our own hands to which it fails. So with that, Mr. Larry, would you like to come up?
Thank you so much, Madelyn. That was excellent. Excellent. You all might not know, Madelyn is about as close to me as my daughter, almost. My daughter was born in Huron Valley, and I'm very proud of you, by the way, Madelyn. Madelyn was born in Huron Valley, so was my daughter. But I'm strolling the hallways at Huron Valley, and it's not well lit. The lights are turned down because it's the maternity ward and all that. And I see the back of a head that looks familiar, and it's Gordon. I said, Gordon, what are you doing here? And he looks back at me like this. He says, are you an idiot? No, he didn't say that. But Madelyn was born 11 hours after my daughter in the same hospital. Karen came a little bit early. She come a little bit early. It was fantastic. So they're almost like twins. So when she was talking about this, I was getting a kick out of it. But I think they would both probably be named Israel. They struggle with God sometimes, like all of us do. They wouldn't be named Jacob. Just a couple things. So we got a little bit of time here, and thank you for saving me a little bit of time. I just say a couple things, but it was excellent. It was very, very good. I enjoyed it. Thank you for bringing all this to us. I like the Proverbs as the icing on the cake too. That was good. That was very good. But did you know? You all know this, that they had this deception in their blood, right? Started with Adam and Eve, didn't it? It started with Adam and Eve, and then it started with Cain and Abel. It began with Cain and Abel. Am I my brother's keeper? Where's your brother? He wouldn't tell God where his brother was at. He killed his brother. Then it went on down the line, right? And Abraham and Sarah. Do you remember when Abraham and Sarah represented to the king that they were brother and sister? Because they were worried, they thought they had to solve this on their own. They had to make this happen. That's what you were alluding to. I like that. And I think we all did. And then if you want to even go further, Isaac and Rebekah deceived a king in the same way. When I read that, I was dumbfounded. I'm like, wow, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, But there was deception in their bloodline. It was way back. It was Abraham and Sarah. Sarah was a beautiful lady, even at 90. I guess people liked, they were all over her at the time. The king was, and God judged them. He had mercy on them because he knew they'd been deceived, right? And you made reference to Jacob's name through Esau. Isn't it right that he was called supplanter? And that name, Jacob, means supplanter, deceiver, to cheat. And you know why? Because he was still trying to get an edge on Esau even in the womb when he grabbed his heel. So he came out with him. Who's first, right? Because he had his hand on his heel, right? So I really enjoyed you connecting that with Isaac. They thought they had to solve the problem themselves, and yes, the mother was heavily into the deception still. Rebecca, she'd been a deceiver before, and she was still into the deception, wasn't she? But I'm also, also came up as who the father of lies is. It's the devil. Anything inspired like that is not from our Father. He's a holy God. He has no corruption, none. And I liked what you had. I liked what you had. Can you put that back up for a second, please? Because I just want to share something with you, man. Because it was very good what you put up there. The three points. You can't do it. Okay, I'm going to say this. You want to affect somebody. You want to fool somebody, right? That was one of the things you said, to deceive. You want to fool somebody. You want to make them believe something that's not true, and there's what it is. It starts internally, is what you said too. There's an intent in your heart to deceive. You have an intent to do this, so you lay out the plans to do it, right? And you went over the whole story about how they laid out the plans to do it, and they were successful. And the dad fell for it, and it was ruined because of that. There it is. Deception is a wicked thing, yes. Father of all lies is the devil. Deception starts internally, yes. There's intent. There's premeditation. A lot of times in a court of law, we have the lies and the premeditation, and that enhances the sentence. That oftentimes in a criminal court, it carries the day to show why this person ought to be put away, because they had intent to do this. It wasn't just manslaughter. It was first-degree murder. It was premeditated, right? Like Cain and Abel. And deception can be used to influence those around you. It's used to defraud, typically. So when you do it, you look to gain, like you said, and you look to defraud people. And I thought this was very, very good. I appreciate it. You know what I was thinking about too while you were talking? Was King David. You remember when he deceived Uriah? Remember he had his eyeball on Bathsheba? Eyeball. And messed around with Bathsheba, didn't he? Bad man. Okay, we all have fallen short of the glory of God. We've all sinned, come short of the glory of God, as the Bible says. But what did he do? He deceived Uriah. Said, come on home, go visit your wife. Uriah had so much honor. He said, no, I'm not going to do that. My men are out in the field. I'm not going to take liberties with my wife. He was married. She was pregnant, so he wanted to deceive and have it be thought that it was Uriah's baby, right? This whole thing, there's a lot of deception in the Bible that bears scrutiny. This is a very good story because the birthright thing, yeah. He had already given his birthright away when they decided to really got into the plot to deceive about it, didn't they? But David gave away his what he did was he put Uriah in the heat of battle so that he would die. He thought he could fix things on his own again. Exactly the stuff that we see with this family lineage, right? Same kind of thing. So I just wanted to share that with you. Those are things that. Another thing I was thinking about is that there's always a table that is set when you go to somebody's house, and all this good food's out there, and then you think, well, this dish would have been good too. And this dish, that's what you do when you put a good message out. You inspire a lot of thought. You make people hungry for more. So that's why I'm sharing with you what else I put on the table. Forgotten it, right? But anyway, thank you so much. That was excellent, Madelyn. I appreciate you very much. Thanks for coming here and sharing your word, the word of the Lord with us. Does anybody have any prayer requests? Let me see. I think I don't either. Andrew, you have any prayer requests? Okay. So Sasha is our daughter's husband, in common law husband. It's his stepmom, a very nice lady. So we pray for her safe passage to and from Tennessee. She lives in Tennessee. She's going to come up and probably help with the children. My daughter's got three kids, 3 boys. In any event, I really I thank all of you for being here today, because a full house is better than an empty house. and we got a lot of people here today. This is good. I want to pray that the Lord bless all of us. The Lord bless our children. The Lord keep us in the light. The Lord keep us in the straight